Good day, everybody. My name is Vicki Bone. I'm your destination enrichment expert on board the Caribbean Princess. Today we're going to talk about Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. This is where we're going, a small island. It is the smallest province in terms of land area and also of population in Canada. But it is also the most densely populated province as well. Population here about 160,000 based on 2019 census, and the island is named after the fourth son of King George III and was the father of Queen Victoria. He's been to this province 5 times in his lifetime. Prince Edward Island is part of the Maritime Provinces. There are 3 provinces that make up the Maritime Provinces. The other 2 are New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. The capital of Prince Edward Island is Charlottetown. It's also the largest city in Prince Edward Island. The Mi'kmaq people were here way before the first Europeans ever came and settled here on the island. The French colonized the island in 1604 as part of the colony of Acadia. Acadia was referred to as also Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island and parts of New Brunswick as well. The French from France settled here. They lived a life that was independent of both the French and the British. They were neutral people. And they referred to the island as Île Saint-Jean. The island was ceded to the British at the conclusion of the French and Indian War in 1763. At that time, it became part of the colony of Nova Scotia. Because the French no longer had control of the island's name changed from Île Saint-Jean to a more anglicized version, and it was called Prince Edward Island. In 1769, the island became its own British colony. Charlottetown is very famous because it hosted a conference in 1864 to discuss the union of the Maritime Provinces. So it was between Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland at that time. The conference was held and had been planned as a meeting of the Maritime Provinces, but the the other colonies in Canada, Upper and Lower Canada, were also interested in discussing some kind of union between the other colonies. That led to a meeting that took place in 1867 called the Canadian Confederation. So Upper and Lower Canada, which is referred to as Ontario and Quebec, wanted to discuss a union as well. On July 1st of 1867, a new country was born in Charlottetown on Prince Edward Island. Now, under the terms of the British North America Act, the new provinces of Quebec, Ontario were created along with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and they became what we know as the Dominion of Canada. It's important to know that Prince Edward Island didn't actually join the other provinces at that time to form the Dominion of Canada. They didn't really want to join. There were some issues going on, and they didn't join until they faced a lot of financial issues. And they were also interested in the prospects of the transcontinental railway being formed, and they want to be part of that. So they ended up joining a few years later in 1873. Prince Edward Island is the 104th largest island in the world. It's Canada's 23rd largest island, and it's the only Canadian province that is solely an island. The coastlines here are, well, they're absolutely beautiful. You get these really huge, long, sandy beaches, lots of dunes, amazing red sandstone cliffs, marshes all over, lovely bays, harbors, and the soil here is quite like bold reddish color. It's very beautiful, and it comes that red color because of the very high iron content. The backbone of the island's economy is farming. In fact, potatoes is their biggest crop. They produce about 25% of Canada's potatoes. But they also have a lot of shellfish, fishing, lobster fishing, oysters, mussels as well. And they also get a lot of tourism here. They probably get about 1.5 million annual visitors coming from all over North America. Now, before May of 1997, there was a ferry, well, two ferries, one right into New Brunswick, and then another one that went over to Nova Scotia. In 1997, the Confederation Bridge opened and it connected the island to the province of New Brunswick. The bridge is 8 miles long or 12.9 kilometers. It is the longest bridge in Canada and it's the world's longest bridge over ice-covered water. Now, there are tolls. You have to pay a toll not to get onto Prince Edward Island, but you have to pay for it when you're coming off of the island, when you're traveling westbound. Now, the toll rates as of this, well, January 2022 is $50 and 1/4. So that's what you need to pay for you to come off of the island with your car. Prince Edward Islands, probably their most famous person here is the author Lucy Maud Montgomery. She was born in Prince Edward Island in the area called Cavendish in 1874. Now, nearby is Green Gables House, became the setting of her internationally best-selling novels. And Anne of Green Gables was published in 1908. And you know what? The manuscript was accepted only on the 6th attempt. Anne of Green Gables has been considered to be a classic children's novel since the mid-20th century. It's set in the late 19th century, and it recounts the adventures of a young girl named Anne Shirley. She's an 11-year-old orphan. She's sent mistakenly to two middle-aged siblings, Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert. They originally wanted a boy. They wanted to adopt a boy because they wanted the boy to work on their farm in this fictional town called Avonlea that takes place in Prince Edward Island. Now, the novel recounts how Anne makes her way through life with the siblings in school and within the town and the stories that go on about her life. To date, millions of copies of her books have been published in over 16 languages. In 1911, Lucy ended up marrying a man. She moved to Ontario. She had 2 sons, and she continued to write. She produced over 19 books, 10 of which featured Anne, and all of them except for one is set in Prince Edward Island. Lucy died in 1942. She is buried overlooking the farms and the fields of her beloved native Cavendish. And the books have been adapted into, well, a movies, television series, animations. There's even a musical all about it as well. Here's a little snippet of the show.
We're getting a little boy from an orphanage in Nova Scotia, and he's coming in on the afternoon train.
Oh, how do, Matthew?
Is the afternoon train due soon?
She's waiting for you on the platform.
She?
My name is Anne Shirley. Anne's out with me.
It's a girl.
I can see that. Where's the boy?
There weren't any. Just her.
We have absolutely no use for a girl.
You don't want me because I'm not a boy?
She's no good for us.
We might be of some good to her.
This is a friend and neighbor of mine, Mrs. Rachel Lynn.
She's terribly skinny and homely, Marilla. Awful heart. Her hair's as red as carrots.
How dare you! I heard before that you were kind of a strange girl, Anne Shirley. But I have a feeling we're gonna get along really well.
That little girl ought to have all the kindness we can give her. We got no call to raise her as cheerless as we was.
You promised we were going to be friends. I hear you giving the highwayman at the White Sands recital. I'm going to try to get you an encore while you're up there, so make sure you have a second selection ready.
Nobody's gonna encore me.
Well, I would. Especially if I had the honor of escorting you to the concert.
You're not an old ogre at all, are you? I didn't mean that.
I most certainly am an old ogre, and don't you let on any.
Yeah, it's a really great show. In fact, you can stream it on some streaming services. I'm not sure exactly which one, but yes, there's quite a few that you can watch about Anne of Green Gables. There's a show, Anne with an E is what it's called. So if you want to experience a little bit more about Anne of Green Gables, and you can go and actually visit. They have this huge heritage place. It's an old farm. It's the 19th century farm that served as the setting for the novels, and it takes place in Cavendish. And this served it's a beautifully, kind of like a museum. You can see where, Anne lived and what she did on the farm and so forth. It's a lot of fun. Now they do have another site. It's called Avonlea, and you can go visit that. And it is actually a purpose-built structure. So this isn't where it took place, but it is a reenactment or sort of like a setting that is based on the novel. So you get to go there and you'll see Anne of Green Gables, Anne Shirley there, and all around the town. You'll see all the characters, and they're all, still acting and portraying the Anne of Green Gables story. It is located in Cavendish. It's about a 45-minute drive from the ship there, but it's a lot of fun to go there and kind of walk around, especially if you grew up like I did, loving Anne of Green Gables books. For some of the sites to see, I can't cover them all, but most of them I will try to cover here. Come see me if I don't cover something that I don't cover something here, and I can help you out with it. Like I said, Charlottetown is the birthplace of Canada, and it's quite a charming coastal city. It is also voted the cultural capital of Canada. A very small city, like I said, not very many residents, but it is abundance of performing arts, art galleries, world-class cuisine, and a lot of people love coming here. The main street in town, well, there's two, but Great George Street, this is a principal street in Charlottetown, traditionally lined with beautiful homes, public buildings. The cathedral is on here. And this is where, so you'll see down at the bottom right, that is where we're going to dock. Great George Street is right there. That's a really popular street to go down, like I said. If you go down Great George Street, you go right to the end of it, you're going to come upon Province House. Province House is their provincial legislature, and it has been the provincial legislature since 1847, standing basically as the birthplace of Confederation, but it's also where the members of Parliament, the provincial legislature, sit. And it's been, like I said, since 1847. So it's a really true symbol of Canadian heritage, and it's a very neoclassical structure built with sandstone, and it's one of the oldest still functioning parliament buildings in the world, and it remains the center of political life for islanders. You can go and see it. I'm not sure if they're doing tours right now. They do have it under like scaffolding and stuff. It seems like it's going under some renovation, but it's still an important building to check out. You'll find it again, that's right where we're docked, and if you go up Great George Street, it is literally at the end of that arrow there. Right there. Now this, I don't usually talk about art centers, but the Confederation Center of the Arts is just right across the street from Province House. Upstairs in it, in the upper foyer, they have transformed it into a museum, with a replica of the historic meeting of the founding fathers of Confederation. And so this is where they met, and they have a film inside. It's a film, it's called The Building of Destiny, and it transports you back to, well, a time when the very first 8 days in September, when the Maritime Provinces met to discuss the joining of the Maritime Provinces, and then also the end up being in 67 when they discuss the Dominion of Canada. So it's really a great spot to go. I highly encourage you. It's a very important piece of Canadian history. Confederation Landing, it's parked right beside where we're docked, and it's a lovely spot to kind of stroll around. They have some very interesting art there, but you'll see this is where the founding fathers of Confederation famously landed in 1864. They have lovely walkways and park benches, plenty of opportunities to survey the activities around the harbor, and lovely views of the ship as well. And sometimes they'll have people performing music and doing different events and stuff in the park. Confederation Landing is literally right beside the ship, so you can't miss it. And again, a great spot to take some good pictures of the ship from. And right beside Confederation Landing Park is Peaks Quay. It's a lovely outdoor venue right on the waterfront. They actually have a wharf, and you go down to it, and they have little restaurants and bars, and they always have somebody playing music. You can get a great meal of seafood here. You can get other types of food as well. You can get the famous Cow's ice cream that Prince Edward Island is famous for. And Peaks Quay, like I said, is just beside Confederation Landing Park right there. Always nice to sort of end your day at here, and then you can kind of stroll back to the ship easily. St. Dunstan's Basilica. Well, this is the cathedral of the Diocese of Charlottetown. It is a stone French Gothic church. It was built in 1913 from the remains of the cathedral that was originally there but was damaged by a fire that same year. You're welcome to go inside. It is a beautiful church. Like I said, it's the fourth church that was actually on this site. It's probably the most visible landmark. It is the highest point in Charlottetown. Well, actually, that's not totally true. The hotel at the pier is got the highest point, but because St. Dunstan's Basilica is a little bit up the hill, the peaks on each side of the church look like they're the highest. So you're going to easily be able to see it from the ship. And again, pop in. It's right on St. George Street, so you can easily just pop in there, head all the way up to Province House, and then stroll around at your leisure. If you're wanting to go a little bit further afield, and I talked about this earlier about Anne of Green Gables, Cavendish is sort of like a resort summer area on the northern shore of Prince Edward Island. It's known for their beaches, their cultural sites like Anne of Green Gables. They have a beautiful Prince Edward Island National Park is here. And in 1790, Cavendish was founded by Scottish immigrants that moved into the area, and it became kind of a farming community. Cavendish is about an hour's drive from the ship, doesn't take too long, and that's where you'll find it right there. It's facing the St. Lawrence Seaway there. Prince Edward Island National Park, also part of Cavendish, sits on the Gulf of St. Lawrence, measures about 60 kilometers or 37 miles, and it ranges from several hundred meters to several kilometers in width. It was established in 1937, and the park's mandate include protection of many broad sand beaches, the sand dunes, the marshes, the wetlands, and it in turn ends up saving a lot of the wildlife that comes to this area. It's a protected beach. They have a lot of nesting birds that are here, including the endangered piping plover. And it's also a very important bird area for birds that are migrating. If you get a chance to go to the park, it's absolutely stunning. They have these boardwalks that are easily accessible for everybody. You go over water in area, marshes and others, sand dunes and others. It's really a lovely sight to see. Now, you might remember last year, Hurricane Fiona came through. Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland all got hit really hard by it. Prince Edward Island, especially the national park, was severely affected. You can see in the top picture, that's an image of the sand dunes before the hurricane came through, and then the hurricane after. You can see how those mountains have now formed. The sand has been completely washed out to sea on these sand dunes. That's how much it affected it. Prince Edward Island National Park is not far. It's on the way to Cavendish, so about 40 minutes or so, and then often you can go up to Cavendish as well. For food and drink, well, there are lots of great restaurants, but I highly recommend to go along Victoria Road, which is a pedestrian-only street right in the heart of the city. Lots of restaurants, bars, great spot for fresh seafood. You can try local wines, local beers. They often have live music. There's also lovely shops that you can go shopping in. It's kind of like a really buzzing, happening kind of area. So again, this is right where we're docked, and if you go along the street right up to Province House, you can find Victoria Road there. So maybe about a 15-minute walk from the ship if you're not stopping. And they're famous for their seafood here: lobster, crab, mussels, oysters, clams, and pretty much lots of different types of fish that you can get as well. Now, the lobster from here ends up moving from these colder waters down to warmer waters, and that's why they start to head south, and that's why the lobster season is usually earlier up here than it is, say, in Maine. But Prince Edward Island has more than 40 million pounds, produces more than 40 million pounds of mussels every single year. It's a great option to try. And 80% of Canadians' mussel are produced here in Prince Edward Island. Now, I mentioned farming. Well, farmers here have been growing potatoes for over 200 years. They're recognized all over the world for their unique taste, excellent quality, and they have their own potato mascot. Aren't you lucky? Yes, you can go to the Potato Museum. Well, I'm sorry. No, you can't really go because it's quite a distance away. So I'm sorry if I've, broken your heart because you won't get to go. But you can see this picture here with the potato mascot. In behind is that mountain. That is all potatoes. They are really developing a big following of brewmasters and cider houses. A lot of craft beer, cider lovers love it here. Definitely try one of the different breweries. There's a whole bunch of them. There's like 4, and there's at least 2 cider companies. But when you get to a restaurant, ask them for a local beer or local cider. They also make a mead wine. Now, mead wine is a wine that is produced and fermented, and then they combine like different fruits with honey, and it makes a nice wine here. Now, I know you can't probably get to the winery. It's a little bit of a distance away, but you will sometimes find it in some of the restaurants. Just ask for a mead wine. But I know you can buy the mead wine in liquor stores here, and there is a liquor store very close to the ship. There's like a food hall, and there's a liquor store inside of there where you can actually buy some of this mead wine. For shopping, well, there is a small mall. It's called Confederation Court. It's right downtown, but it's not huge. But there's lots of shopping in and along Queen Street, which is one street over from Great George Street. Nice shops also at the Port Building. So if you're on a tour, no need to worry. Really great shops, including the Prince Edward Island Preserve Company that you can go into. It's right at the pier. For practical information, well, we dock right downtown. I love that. The cruise terminal was opened up in 2007. Now, it was converted from an old potato warehouse, and now it's a cruise ship pier and cruise pier. You can easily walk to all the major sites, restaurants, bars, shopping, parks, and all that. Very easy to get around here. So we're docked right here. This is all of downtown. It's easy to get around. Now that's Great George Street with the arrow there. And the street to the left of Great George Street or to the west of Great George is Queen Street. That has a lot more restaurants and shops and bars on it. But there's some lovely items that you can buy all along the street. There's also a great food hall, like I'd mentioned. It's literally right here. And what I like is they have a very good tourist information. Now, there is a tourist information in the port building, but there's one also in the food hall here. And there's a few companies that offer private tours from here. So you can go along there. They have like a horse-drawn carriage ride. They have a little trolley bus that will take you around and you can buy it, and the times vary. You just show up there and you pay with a credit card or debit or cash right there, right at the food hall, and that arrow is pointing to it right there. It's really easy to get around here if you're just wanting to stay in town. Like I mentioned, it's a great walking town, relatively flat, a little bit uphill to go into town, but nothing that's would be really a big problem. Boardwalks, sidewalks, there's lovely parks. And like I said, easy to walk right into town. There is a tour bus. It's called the Big Pink Bus, and it's not a hop-on, hop-off bus. It is just a hop-on bus, and it's about 1.5 hours or so of a tour. But it's like 1 hour of driving, then they stop, and then you do a bit of a walking tour with a guide, and then you get back on. But there's other options. There's things like you can go on a horse-drawn tour or a bus tour. They have like a trolley tour and so forth. But all of those are independent tours. You're going to have to go ashore and book that on your own. But you can book the Big Pink Bus tour directly on the ship, and then you would have your ticket for it right away. For transportation, well, if you're on a ship's tour, check your tour ticket, find out what it says you're supposed to meet at. Most of them pull right up to the pier, so that's not an issue. If you are going independent and you want to say, hi, go get a taxi, well, there's many taxis that are available at the port. They are regulated. I would say about $8 to $10 Canadian for a trip in a vehicle to say right into the heart of downtown. But if you can walk, it's very easy to do. And also they don't have Uber. They have a different type of ride sharing system, and I can't recall what it is, but lots of taxis in and around. This isn't a spot where you might look at possibly renting a car. You could do that. If you are, just make sure you're booking this ahead of time. Make sure you're selecting a car rental location to pick up that is in the downtown area, not at the airport. But Prince Edward Island has a really good coastal driving tours. You can get maps and booklets and stuff to show you. Now, they are lovely. I've done a few of them. I've done the Central and the Points East. Haven't done the North Cape one, but you definitely could do the Central Coastal Drive in the time that we are in port. And head up to Cavendish. You could head up to see the Anna Green Gables sites and so forth. But they don't have major highway systems here. It's mainly 2 lanes. Maximum speed is 90 kilometers an hour. So you don't get around really very quickly. Not so much that it's like horrendous traffic like in some of the major cities, but it can back up. So just be aware of that if you are renting a car. We are in Canada, so we are using the Canadian currency. $1 equals about 1.32 Canadian, give or take a little bit. Of course, that's not the exchange rate you're going to get if you're going out shopping and you're wanting to pay with American dollar. In fact, you are not going to get a good exchange rate if you're paying with American dollar. But I would highly recommend you carrying maybe a little bit of Canadian money because we still have some ports that you could use it in. But there's some ATMs right downtown. There's one at the pier as well. I would recommend carrying, smaller bills if you can because you're going to get Canadian currency back. If you're buying something, say your meal or you're buying some souvenirs, pay with your debit or your credit card because you're going to get the best exchange rate from the bank on that day. And if you're lucky enough, you have a credit card that does not have a transaction fee for out of country, then it's even better for you. If you have any questions, you can come see me at my desk. My desk is located right beside the Shore Excursions desk, just on the far right there, on deck 6, right behind guest services. You can find out what my hours are on the back of the daily program every single day. If you see me around, come say hi. I always love chatting with everybody. And again, I always end all of my talks with a quote. And today's quote today is, "My favorite thing to do is to go where I've never been." I hope everybody has a fabulous day in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Thank you.